Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Etson, and we're so glad you're here because it's story time. Theros Beyond Death is the latest release for Magic the Gathering, and as you go tearing into those booster packs, I thought it'd be a good time to give you a rundown of everything happening in this set. First though, let me say thank you to everyone who helps make this show possible through their support on Patreon. You can become a lore mage using the link down below, and subscribing for even just $1 a month gets you access to our exclusive Discord server and all sorts of fun perks and goodies, so come along and check it out. Okay, so what's happening in Theros Beyond Death? Well, the whole thing takes place on a plane called Theros, which gets its inspiration from Greek mythology. There's even a pantheon of gods, 15 of them to be exact. They won't all get cards in this set, but they do all get referenced either by the title or flavor text of other cards. These gods influence life on Theros mostly through enchantments. You'll find a higher than usual number of them, as well as cards that care about you casting them or controlling them. You'll also find some creatures that are themselves enchantments. This is a feature unique to Theros, as these creatures come from Nyx, the star-filled dreamland that is home to the gods of the plane, and their creations, the Nyxborn. Now, it wouldn't be a Magic story without some planeswalkers, and the most important one to know is Elspeth. I just did a whole video on her backstory leading up to this, so make sure you check that one out if you haven't already. The story for Theros Beyond Death begins with Elspeth dead and in the underworld, but things are happening in the mortal realm that are about to change that. This is Heliod, sun-crowned. In Magic, it's easy to assume white cards are the good guys and black cards are the bad guys, but here on Theros that isn't exactly the case. Heliod is a vain and paranoid god who is afraid someone else is going to take his place in the Pantheon. To prevent this, he makes a champion out of Daxos, who had been Elspeth's lover until she accidentally was tricked into killing him. Reborn as a demigod, Daxos was tasked with removing the references to all the other gods from the great city of Meletis. The other gods were, of course, not happy about this, and the tension quickly escalated into a full-on war between the gods, which probably could have been a whole set by itself, but since we just had War of the Spark, they probably just wanted a tighter focus this time around. Anyway, the main opposition to Heliod would be Erebos, who watches over the underworld, and as he got dragged into this war with the other gods, he kind of lost his focus on the souls that he was supposed to be monitoring, and as a result, many of them began to find their way back into the realm of the living. Erebos put forth his own champion, an undead warrior named Timuret. We've seen him on our previous visit to Theros, where he and his army of returned would lead nighttime raids against the living. The returned, I should mention, are people who have died on Theros and went to the underworld and then replaced their own face with a gold mask and gave up all of their memories for another shot at life as a zombie. Meanwhile, Thassa, god of the sea, picked her own champion, Calyx, who was referenced on cards in the original Theros block, but never seen. Thassa has her own interesting side story. The planeswalker Kiora confronted her and stole her Bident, and then used that in the defense of Zendikar, but all of that is a story for another time. In Theros Beyond Death, you'll find this event commemorated with a saga. Sagas are enchantments that tell a story over time. Each turn they're in play, they have a different effect. You'll find sagas giving a magic twist to classic tales like the Battle for Troy and the first Olympic Games. And since we're all about stories here at Magic Arcanum, these are some of my favorite cards in the set. Perforos and Nylea also get in on the action with their own demigod champions as well. Those would be Anax and Renata. Anax was around on our first visit to Theros, kind of standing in as a King Leonidas type character. You remember the "This is Sparta" guy, and Renata is an entirely new character. So those are the 5 gods of each color, each with their own matching champion. As this is all going on, there is another god watching who is probably the most angry out of all of them. That would be Clothis, god of destiny. Her job among the Pantheon is somewhat special. Many, many years ago, Clothis volunteered to act as a seal and hold the Titans in prison forever. Guess we better back up a bit. Originally on Theros, Titans walked the mortal realm, sowing death and destruction wherever they went. We get 2 of these legendary creatures in this set, but it's unclear how many of them in total there really are. The people of Theros prayed for salvation from these Titans, and their prayers created the gods, who then defeated the Titans, and Clothis bound them in the underworld, never to bother mortals again. That is until this War of the Gods breaks out, and Erebos leaves the keys to the underworld in the lock. But who among us has not done that, right? Clothis watches in horror as the Titans break free, along with other monsters from the underworld. Pelukranos, a once mighty Hydra vanquished by Elspeth, manages to escape, along with, like, everybody else. This infuriates the god, who believes no one should be able to escape from their assigned destiny. This prompts Clothis to create her own champion, who would serve as her right hand and help return all these runaways to their rightful place. That would be Calyx, Destiny's Hand. Now, his card is a planeswalker, but he did not start out that way. Originally, he was like any other Nyxborn, but after several encounters with Elspeth, things changed. Let me pivot real quick to Elspeth. While in the underworld, she was tormented by another planeswalker, Ashiok Nightmare Muse. True to their name, Ashiok forced Elspeth to relive some of her worst nightmares, including the time she killed Daxos, the time she spent among the Phyrexians, and the time she was killed by Heliod. The latter 2 are important because it's through these dreams that Ashiok learns of the existence of the Phyrexians and then leaves Theros in search of them to study these living nightmares. As for the Heliod bit, while Elspeth was experiencing that particular nightmare, she grabbed Heliod's spear, and because Ashiok's nightmare magic has a way of making things real, when Elspeth woke up, she was still holding the weapon. That is some Rise of Skywalker level hacks, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Elspeth, now armed with the Shadow Spear, begins her escape from the underworld with Calyx in hot pursuit, which I guess means we can go back to talking about him. Calyx is what we call an Auramancer. He specializes in enchantment magic, which is a perfect fit for Theros, especially for how it relates to the gods and everything. Surrounding Calyx in his art are needles with thread that's supposed to represent the threads of fate, which are presumably inescapable. Every time Calyx catches up to Elspeth, they fight, and Elspeth wins. But Calyx learns from his losses, and he does gain experience and get better. He's sort of like a magical Terminator, if you think about it. Elspeth finally reaches the exit to the underworld, and waiting for her is Heliod, who believes that if she escapes, it will be the end of him. So he attacks her. Unfortunately, people have already started believing in Elspeth more than they do in Heliod, so his own spear breaks, leaving Elspeth holding what is now the real one. Heliod's defeat is of great amusement to Erebos, who then grants Elspeth safe passage out of the underworld. She has a brief reunion with Daxos, and then planeswalks away, destination unknown. Calyx is watching all of this and is overcome with emotion. His whole reason for existing is to stop Elspeth from leaving the underworld, and not only did she get out of that, she just left the whole plane, so he has no way to catch her and drag her and put her back where she belongs. So of course, that's when his spark ignites, and we discover Calyx is a planeswalker. Now remember, when your spark ignites, you planeswalk to a random destination. It is unlikely to be the same spot Elspeth just went, so we will probably see Calyx appear in other sets before he does cross paths once again with Elspeth. Meanwhile, Erebos arranges a fitting punishment for Heliod, who started this whole war out of fear of losing the devotion of his followers. Erebos places Heliod under a massive boulder which he must hold up over his head forever, or until his followers stop believing in him. And that's it. That's all we really know about the story for Theros Beyond Death. Elspeth escapes from the underworld after fighting her way past Calyx and suffering through the nightmares of Ashiok. Ashiok and Calyx have left the plane, leaving Theros with no planeswalkers for the first time in like 5-6 years. With no dangling story threads, it might be a while before we return to this land of enchantment. That doesn't mean we can't give it a send-off with a mustache minute, though. So get ready, because here we go. What is up with jailers in Magic having a really bad time? Nahiri volunteered to seal away the Eldrazi, and then they get out and she goes berserk, and Klothys volunteers to seal away the Titans, and then they get out, and she has a very similar episode. It's like they set the bar with Mog Jailer and just left it there. So Ashiok can leave the underworld by planeswalking, but Elspeth cannot. So we have to assume it's because, like, Erebos holds her soul or something, right? But that still doesn't explain how Ashiok can get into the underworld anytime they want. Is this whole thing just made out of Swiss cheese? If I was casting the Magic movie, Calyx would be played by George Clooney, but back when he was on ER and he had that Caesar-style haircut. And Ashiok would be Miley Cyrus. Yep. All right, that's enough of that. I am really excited to go back to Theros. I've already got tons of deck ideas bouncing around in my noggin. This set looks insane. What cards are you hoping to add to your collection? Let me know down in the comments, and then make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. I'll see ya.